Beyond the Numbers, the podcast, with Sobukola Coker from Traballo Accountants and Business Advisors.
Hello and welcome to episode 1 of Beyond the Numbers, our new podcast with Traballo Accountants and Business Advisors, where we're going to be lifting the lid on everything to do with running your business. And it's great to be joined by Sobukola from Traballo Limited, who's going to be joining me on the podcast today, also known as Shob. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thanks. I'm very well. How are you?
I'm great, and I love your calming persona, which is what you need when you're running a business. As a business owner myself, these are all the kind of things that I lie awake at night worrying about and needing to feel like I've got a handle on my business. So I think today we're going to help kind of start the ball rolling on getting to grips with running your business, and also find out what services you offer to companies and entrepreneurs that are running their businesses anywhere in the world, basically. So let's start off with starting a business, which is where it all begins, really. Why do people do that crazy thing of actually starting their own business, do you think?
I would say that it depends on the person. Starting a business for many people, it's something that they have thought about for a long time. I think the best way to start this is give my own example of how I started a business, and starting with the journey of setting up our accounting and business advisory firm, Traballo.
Yeah.
So many years ago, I started in industry, working in investment banking.
Okay.
So a significant shift. But I've always wanted to do my own thing.
Yeah.
Now, while I was working in industry, it was exceptionally long hours. I started in sales and then moved on to derivatives, finance, and spent a long time within the finance aspects of investment banking. Exceptionally long hours. We were doing, 9 till late in the evening.
That's exactly how you imagine it is when you're working in the city and you're doing those kind of intense jobs that people, they work hard, they play hard, but maybe they don't get an awful lot of time to be doing that because they're just constantly just being there ready to react to whatever's coming up on the computer screens.
Exactly. But I've always wanted to do my own thing. I had always, envisaged coming out, setting up my own business. And because I'm an accountant and, a chartered management accountant, so it's, more than just the accounting, it's also looking at strategy and the rest of it. I had always wanted to help, other people. So, to cut the long story short, a few years after about 20 years of being within investment banking, I then decided to go on my own and set up Traballo. Now, that in itself was a bit of a challenge because we had to do the whole question of when. How will I be able to afford the mortgage? How will I be able to, keep food on the table, and so on and so forth.
And these are the same things that everyone that started a business goes through. It's that initial fear of, okay, it's all down to me now. I've got to, there's no magic money tree. I've got to generate this money to sustain my life, my existence, my children, my family, keep the mortgage payments coming out. It's scary stuff.
It is scary and it is interesting. But I would say it's the best thing I've ever done. So with us, and when I say us, that's my wife and I, because we had to do a big sit down, look at all of the finances and come up with some sort of a strategy on how we were going to be able to maintain the lifestyle, or at least ensure that it doesn't just drop significantly. So the question was why. We looked at the economic situation.
Yeah.
We started in about 2021, which is just about when COVID hit. Looking at the economic situation, in banking, there was always the risk of redundancies. That was a consistent thing, because banking is a very cut edge industry.
Yeah.
Things can be very, very
It's ruthless.
It is, to be fair. But in that being said, I've been doing that for over 20 years. So I'm kind of used to it. I kind of have a good understanding of what happened and the terrain. But I wanted to be in a situation where I, had my own destiny in my hands. And as a result, I started to think through all of the skill sets that I had that I hadn't necessarily considered, if that makes sense. So you're just putting some things in perspective. My first degree is in economics, and I'm an economist, first of all. I also have a master's degree in international economics. Then, I'm a chartered management accountant. So there's a whole lot of, areas that I was using within banking, but using, to help other people's businesses. And I realized that I had the skill sets to bring into my own business, put things together, understand what was happening in the society, understand the economy. And then I say to myself, well, how would it work for me to be able to do this for others? Small, medium-sized businesses. One of the bigger challenges that we found was that a lot of people would come to me once they found out I was a chartered accountant and say, "Can you do my books?" Right? And I would always ask the question, do you already have an accountant? Yes, I do. Why can't your accountant do it? Well, I send messages to my accountant and I don't get a response. And that was somewhat consistent.
Yeah, it's a pattern, I think, that you find with a lot of people that are just bookkeepers, basically, that they've got a lot of work on. They don't have time to give everyone that personal attention. They're just getting the job done, and they're probably very busy, especially when it comes to the end of certain tax years and business periods and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. And now that I am within that world, I now have a better understanding of why so. With every business, one of the things that you're going to need to do is determine what area you want to provide your either service or goods in. So, for instance, I think the best analogy I can use is the supermarkets, right? You can go to high-priced, high-quality supermarket. I won't mention any names. Or you could go, in the middle where it is moderately priced, but still high quality. And then you can go to the ones where they're quite low priced, good quality, but you get what you pay for.
And they have a bargain aisle in the middle, which is very important.
Exactly. and for that area, it will then be volume. So if you look at it from an accounting perspective, there are accountants who decide their business strategy is volume. So they are quite low priced, but then it is just the numbers. Now, once they start to get a mass of those numbers, then they don't have any time to speak to anyone. And it just makes sense. So if you, as a business owner, say, well, all that I'm interested in is the price, then what you get is they get the job done, they get the accounts for compliance done, but that's it. There's no time for any interaction, and it's quite important that that is understood.
And I think you do need to understand that you get what you pay for, don't you? So if you're looking with any service, there's a reason why some people are cheaper than others, because maybe you're not getting that level of service, but they're doing the job probably competently. But if you need extra support with your business, which I think so many people do, that the job of what you guys do is so much more than just bookkeeping.
Exactly. So from our perspective, what we wanted to do is change things around a bit. We wanted to be able to provide high quality compliance work, but which is the basics. So by compliance, just to put it into perspective, it is getting your company accounts done, your tax returns, self-assessment, VAT, and so on and so forth. So all of the things that, are the bedrock of, of companies and accounting compliance. But on top of that, we also then wanted to be able to help and assist and handhold the clients where required. What we wanted to do is be able to train them to understand the concepts of the basics and then a bit more. So we're now talking about looking at your business, talking strategy, talking planning. One of the key concepts that comes up once you start looking at having a business is having a business plan. Interesting fact, 90% of businesses that are set up fail maybe within 10 years, but in reality,
a lot of them fail in the first couple of years, don't they?
a lot fail within the first couple of years, but then there's many reasons for that. So as an example, some people decide, hey, I want to set up a business, but is it really a business? Is it a hobby? Is it something just to get a bit of extra money, even though you're putting a structure around it and setting up a limited company and so on and so forth? But for the serious-minded people, you really want to plan it. It's just like everything else. You want to put some sort of a plan together. You want to think through, what area of the economy am I looking to service? Who is my target market? How am I going to price? Am I low, medium, high? If I do that, what gaps am I trying to fill within the markets, and so on and so forth.
I think the thing that a lot of businesses don't realize when they get started, they think, business planning, it's another thing on the list of paperwork that I have to do, that I have to tick off. It's not the business plan itself that's important. It's the thought process and the fact that you've gone through asking yourself those questions and actually confirming to yourself that you've got a viable business. That's the whole point of it. That if you haven't been through that process, you will find out 3 or 5 or 10 years down the line that your business is not viable.
Exactly. So putting a business plan together. The business plan is a document, all right, and the document is only as useful as what is in it, and the people who are taking the actions that you've laid out,
and whether it's true. There's no point lying to yourself and just making stuff up in your business plan.
Exactly. So I'll use a common example that comes to us when people come and say they want to start a business. People come up with, okay, I want to start a business, and within the first year, I'm going to make £1 million as an example, which is fine. There may be.
It's always a round number, isn't it?
there may be businesses that can make £1 million in the first year, but not that many. In reality, we start with the questions of just asking them, how are you going to make £1 million? I don't know. I'm going to sell. Okay, fantastic. What are you going to sell? Oh, okay, I've got this idea. Where are you going to sell it? I haven't thought through that. Okay. What is your sales channel? Really not gone through that. How many staff are you going to need? What sort of training are you going to give them? A range of very high level items, and then you find out that it hasn't been thought through. In reality, you don't really need a business plan. That's the truth. There are people who can do it without, but you do have to have some sort of a plan, strategy, actions.
Yeah, I think the people that don't have a business plan, they've got it all in their head.
Exactly.
So they've done a business plan, but they've thought it through. They know exactly what they're doing, and they've got that in their head. But that doesn't mean they haven't done a business plan. It's just that they haven't written it all down. But I think what you can bring to this is asking the right questions and that level of accountability. So when you've got, it's like having a personal trainer. When you've got someone there asking those questions, it's a lot more awkward when you don't know the answer.
Exactly, and so we start to say, there is a saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yeah.
It is good practice to have a plan. It is good practice to put actions together based off of that plan and to think through how you're going to achieve them. And that is exactly what we do. We would help businesses in writing that plan, speaking to them, and in the discussions, just coming up with the things that they haven't necessarily thought through, and making sure that then comes into light, if that makes sense. And in addition to that, you also have to get to the numbers, right? So we would also do a 3 to 5 year projection into the future of what sort of numbers the business is looking to generate and what the potential costs will be. And it's just running down a whole lot of items and ensuring that you've considered everything. Then we start to talk about the strategy, right? It is the sales. How are you going to make those sales? It is the marketing. What is your marketing strategy?
And also understanding what the minimum is that you need to stay in business, what the range of possibilities is. Like, okay, best case scenario, what are the numbers going to look like? Worst case scenario, when you're in trouble, what's your contingency plan? All those kind of things.
Exactly. So cash flow and the rest of it then starts to come into play. When you are first starting a business, you have to think through, where is the money going to come from? This is a question that I get a lot, from people, and there's many ways to think about it. But one of the key ways that I see from a lot of my clients is, for those who are very interested in setting up their own businesses, a lot of them start with being in their 9 to 5, and then they do their side hustle.
Yeah.
From 5 to 9. And once that side hustle, which is the business, starts to grow legs, then they start to, see that it is actually viable, it makes sense, and then they may then start thinking, okay, can this actually sustain me? Now, that doesn't necessarily have to be the way. For some people,
it's the safe way of doing it, though, isn't it? So you've got less risk because you're still getting paid doing your 9 to 5. But I think sometimes you can't properly commit to the business if you're just doing it part time.
Exactly.
And you're not necessarily going to know what the potential of it is. And when people want to have a meeting with you and you say, "Oh, I can only do this 7 o'clock in the evening," it's very difficult.
And exactly, because we did it the hard way. I did the hard way too. So because I was working in investment banking, like I said, working exceptionally long hours, I couldn't do both. So we did have to come to that conscious decision of dropping one income within the family and starting the business full time. Exceptionally difficult. I don't really encourage anyone to go down that route, especially if you already have a mortgage, you've got kids, you've got and all of the other things that come with it.
You've also got to factor in the time that you want to spend with your family, and at the moment, summer holidays, it's very difficult for me running a business and dealing with childcare and things like that at the same time. There's so many demands on your time.
Exactly, because there's life continues, right? And you have to decide where you want to be. So some people may say, I want to start a business because I want to get a bit more time. That's all well and good. However, starting a business is difficult, right? The little things that you enjoy while you're working in an established organization. For instance, you decide your computer has a glitch. You pick up the phone and you call IT. Well, when you start your own business, if you're starting on a shoestring, as an example, there is no IT.
Yeah.
So you're IT, and I guess that then brings us to all of the different hats that an entrepreneur, has to wear when they first start. And from that perspective, an entrepreneur comes up. You are everything. You are the CEO. You are legal because you got to look through your documents. You are HR. You are sales, marketing. And so much more. So it actually demands a lot more time than when you were, in paid employment. So it's not that easy.
It's not that easy, and you don't have the luxury of paying people to do all those things when you first started. And some of them are very important and a bit of a minefield, especially the legal side and compliance and all of those kind of things. So I think, this is what scares some people when they realize what they've taken on.
Exactly. But the key thing is, if you were speaking to an accountant, and, there are loads of fantastic accountants out there, including ourselves, who are very competent. The key is, if you're having those conversations, at the inception, then you can plan against all of these things, and that is the key. These things are, all of these items are listed out. The ones that you are the most important that you can possibly pay for. Maybe you get to pay for those. The ones that you can do yourself, it will take a bit more time. You can do those, and so on and so forth. But having that plan ahead puts you in much better stead.
And I think a lot of the time when you start a business, you learn new skills, you develop new skills. So if you're getting into catering, you might need to get your food hygiene certificates yourself, because you're ultimately responsible for everything. If you're running other businesses, you might want to go on an HR course or something, and it's possible to kind of level up your skill set in a lot of these areas. But the most important thing is just making sure that while you're doing all of those 100 other jobs, you're staying on top of the numbers and actually running the business.
There is a lot of help out there. I think it's very important for entrepreneurs to know that there is a lot of help out there. So from networking, you meet new people. From those people, there may be people who are willing to give you some advice or some time for free. You can go to exhibitions and so on and so forth. You may be able to find some freebies, at some of these things. So the key to note is that there is a lot of help out there, but you have to put yourself out there to identify the help.
And people are so supportive in the business community. You've just got to go in there with a smile on your face, not trying to sell something to somebody, and then they love to help you. But if you go to a networking event and the first thing you do is just start talking about your company and trying to get them on board as a customer, then it just puts up those barriers. It's the first step is just having that relationship with somebody and get them to like you, and then they will help you if you ask them. Or if you've got a problem, there's a lot of these groups where people sit around the table and they help each other with different situations and kind of pool their ideas.
Yeah, exactly. People do business in general with people that they know and trust. So it's much, much easier once people get to know you. And you're not doing business with someone because they're necessarily the best at it. It's not rocket science in many instances, right? So but once people get to know you, they understand. You have similarities to them. You are someone that they can trust. Then people are more and more likely to want to do things with you.
And I think also making friends with your competitors, because it's always better to be on good terms with the people that do the same thing as you, because a lot of the time you might find that you've got a potential customer that you can't help because there's a conflict of interest or for whatever reason, and then you can put them in touch with somebody else and vice versa, and sometimes it can lead to more opportunities.
Exactly, and that works in many various ways. So for instance, if you are if you're friends or close to some of your competitors who are more established and much bigger, then what you find is that they have a certain threshold of which they can take on clients. Now, in the instance where clients come and can't meet that threshold, they may then just pass them down to you because you're a newbie in the business. So the key thing to note is that there is a lot of help out there. So it is to get yourself out there, go for networking, join groups. There are loads and loads of Facebook groups. There's loads of things going on, on all the different social media platforms, and it is just having those discussions, and one thing leads to another.
Absolutely. So what are some of the things that you need to kind of tick off your list when you're starting a business? Because there's a lot of kind of legal paperworky type stuff that you've got to do to make sure that it's all in place. Is there kind of like a set list of things to make sure that you've done?
I think the fundamentals, you first of all have to decide what sort of structure of business you want to start with. So you may decide the simplest and easiest is to start as a sole trader, where you don't necessarily need to register anything. All you need to do is just go to it, let HMRC know that you're doing a side hustle, quote unquote, and then you'll be registered for self-assessment. With that, you can start off. You need to try as much as possible to keep things as clean as possible. So with a sole trader, you can go and set up a bank account for that sole trade, so that you're not mixing your personal and your business. It makes it cleaner for you. It makes it cleaner for the accountant and for everyone else, and you can kind of separate what you're doing. So there's the sole trade. Then there's there's partnerships. There's limited companies. You kind of have to decide in what direction you want to go.
So what's the advantage of having it as a limited company rather than being a sole trader?
So there's a range of things. From a limited company perspective, when you are a limited company, you are seen as slightly bigger. So there's always the advantage of people recognize you as a company. As a sole trader, it is not saying that it is bad. It's just that there may be challenges with the perception that people get. Now, on top of that, from a limited company perspective, the company is an entity in itself, right? So you are an individual. The company is quote unquote, an individual in its own right, and as such, it is the company that is dealing with the third parties. So one of the key areas of having a limited company, it would then be the aspect of the limited liability. So if there's an issue within the company, it is kept within that company and within the establishment, if that makes sense.
What sort of things could the company be liable for? So it would be financial things, but are there any other kind of liabilities that come under that? So there are a range of areas that need to be considered when you set up a limited company. The first thing that we need to think about is that let's use the dreaded area of HMRC. Right. So once you set up a limited company, the first thing that happens is that you initially have some particular dates that you need to meet from a compliance perspective. So you have a year end. There's now a tax date that needs to be met, and you have to ensure that you can meet all of those compliance deadlines. You also have to set up in company's house. And once that company is set up in company's house, there are a few things that you need to be aware of. So, for instance, you have to do something called a confirmation statement. These are just little things that any accountant can help you with. But the key is that if you have a company set up, once a year, as an example, you have to get your confirmation statement done. Now, currently, there is no fine for missing your confirmation statement date. But
if you haven't done it in 3 months, then your bank could shut down your account, and the company can also be shut down. So
yeah, because you see that sometimes, and it's surprising how many companies get those first Gazette strike-off notices and things, and then they sort it. Suddenly they spring into action and they sort it out. But you do notice it when you look up companies on Companies House, and that doesn't look good, does it?
No, it doesn't. And that is why, if you're setting up a business, you think, well, I'm just going to do everything by myself. The issue with doing everything by yourself is that you've got a million things in regards to the actual business that you're trying to concentrate on, and then little things like confirmation statements, you forget. If you've got an accountant, the likelihood is that the accountant has it on some sort of CRM or system that says this is the date for this client, and they start to chase you. But that is, just one of the many things. With HMRC, if you miss your account submission dates or your tax submission dates, there are fines that are associated with that. And the fines, the way that it works now, the fines kind of double every X period. So it is things that little things that you need to just have a handle on, and the easiest way to do that is to have an accountant that is managing that on your behalf. Because
actually, you'll find quite quickly that the cost of the fines is a lot more than you would have been paying the accountant anyway.
Exactly.
So how frustrating would that be?
Exactly. So yes, so there are a range of issues. You want to set up a bank account. The banks would want to ensure that what is the information that you've provided in Companies House is similar to the information you've given them. There's a whole host of compliance issues that need to come out from there. There are things like the Information Commissioner's Office. This is one that very easily people ignore. The ICO. So you get a letter once you've set up from a limited company. You get a letter soon after saying, do you need to register with the ICO, and do you need to pay a little fee? Many people ignore those letters, and there can be substantial fines that come with that if it is then found that you were meant to have registered and you didn't. So
that's to do with what data you hold,
yes,
which could potentially be a CRM system or any kind of database,
any kind of database
details,
where you're holding client details and so on and so forth. So you're meant to register. You're meant to pay the regulator, and then it gives you the sense of how you need to be careful with your client data and so on and so forth. But those are just a few minor things that a lot of people may not be aware of. But your accountant, if you do have an accountant, your accountant may be able to help you with some of these items, and just giving you some sort of information about the kind of things that you should be expecting, or the kind of things you need to look out for.
And I think also on the financial side, it can be a bit of a minefield with all of the stuff that accountants would normally help you with, like understanding working capital, understanding your assets and your liabilities, and all of that kind of stuff. That if you're not an accountant, some of these terms seem very complicated, and just basic bookkeeping, and there's so much to do.
Exactly. So one of the things that we do when we take up new clients, we're going to have to talk about the dreaded aspect of tax in a second. But yeah, so one of the things that we do when we onboard clients is that we spend the first few weeks in just talking to the clients in what they can and cannot do, the things that they should expect. So for instance, we give them a bit of training on allowable expenses, so things that you can actually pass through the business as business expenses. It will shock you to think that people believe that they can pass anything through their businesses.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that just justify it to themselves, and they're like, okay, I'm going to claim back my haircuts because I have to look nice when I go to meetings. And yeah, I need a steering wheel cover because I'm driving to work every day and my hands will get cold.
Exactly. So it is very important that new businesses, and in many instances also old businesses, have a clear understanding of the kinds of expenses or allowable expenses that can go through their businesses. Then we start talking about the different types of taxes. Now, as you probably be aware, it takes you get set up, you're running the business, you're making a bit of money, you've got expenses, but for some reason you forget that there is the tax man that needs to be paid. Once your year end is over or the accounts are done. There's also a bit of a lag between the accounts being done and the period in which you need to pay tax. It is always good practice, especially for smaller businesses when you're starting, if you're lucky enough for your business to be generating some revenue and profit, for you to start thinking, how do I pay the tax, which is then cash flow, and so on and so forth, that need to be considered.
I think the tricky bit is when you're not making money and the tax bill comes and you haven't got that money put aside. So that is that corporation tax that we're talking about here? So
it's corporation tax we're talking about. Yeah. So corporation tax is paid on profit. Right. So, unfortunately, as you've rightly said, yes, you may be making some profit, but if you haven't thought through it, that yes, some of this money, is not necessarily mine, and I'm going to have to give the government a bit of it. Then you could fall into, okay, well, I want to expand my business and I've got a bit of cash in the account, so let's throw it into the business and expand. But then the tax bill comes and you start having some difficulty. It is quite important to note that there are taxes to be paid. One of the key ones, again, that people forget, and this this happens consistently, is VAT. Right. So with VAT, from a VAT perspective, all you are doing in reality is collecting money on behalf of the government. So it is not your money.
Yeah, but I think a lot of businesses, they think, it's fine that I'm charging VAT. I can keep that because I'm spending enough that I can claim the VAT back, and then it all balances out at the end of the day, and we don't have to pay anything. Sometimes we get some money back. It's great.
And that's the beauty of why VAT is what is called making tax digital. As in, it has gone into making, which means that every quarter for many businesses, you do your returns every quarter, right? So the tax man knows that you can go off and spend it. So every quarter, do your accounts and then send the money to us if you owe us. Now, you have to, there are many different bookkeeping and accounting systems out there. So, the likes of QuickBooks, Xero, and so on and so forth. Now, the key is if you are, using a bookkeeper or an accountant, or even doing it yourself and just making sure that those are, kept regularly, then you should be able to see where you fall with your VAT liabilities. But unfortunately, what happens again is that the entrepreneur is so busy, especially when you're a new business. Of course, the more established businesses have people to do these, but where you're a smaller business, you're thinking to yourself, I don't have the time to do all of this because I've got all of this other stuff to do, and in effect, what then happens is that your expenses don't necessarily match the income. So net, you are going to be paying money to the government. If you haven't put some money aside for and or understand that you need to, then yes, you would start having some cash flow issues, in which case you would start to owe the government. And that it can easily start to mothball into something bigger.
But you don't have to register for VAT, do you? If you're a small business that isn't at that threshold yet, it's optional. But sometimes it can be a good idea if you've got a lot of stuff that you're spending on your outgoings that you're paying VAT on.
Yes, exactly. So in general, from a VAT perspective, the threshold, I believe, has been moved from 85 to 90,000 or thereabouts. However, if you haven't met that threshold yet, then some smaller businesses may consider registering for VAT. The key that you do need to realize is that from a VAT perspective, then comes the added compliance of the quarterly submissions. So putting that in mind, there are advantages to registering for VAT earlier. As an example, for businesses, when you first register, you can claim back 6 months of expenses and 4 years of assets. So for the first VAT submission after you've become VAT registered, if you when you first set up, you found yourself paying for a lot of services to get your business running, and you've been and the companies that were supplying you those services were VAT registered, then it means that you can actually claim back that money from the government. That can add up to be a substantial amount. So yes, so some businesses will opt to become VAT registered even when they haven't yet hit the threshold, and from a cash flow perspective, it helps them when they do receive that money back from the government.
So it's, I guess, an important question to ask yourself, if you've been trading for nearly 4 years, is that's the point to think maybe this is the moment to go VAT registered, because otherwise it's going to be more than 4 years ago.
Yes, exactly. So because it's 4 years on assets, 6 months on services. So if you've been buying significant equipment, we're in a studio right now, right? So,
for example,
exactly. So there's so many things that I'm sure costs an arm and a leg, and the likelihood is that the vast majority of these would have VAT on them. So yes, if you've been trading for a while, and you're thinking, okay, well, I did have to put down some significant amounts of money at inception to buy some of this equipment, and time is going by, then it may be a good idea if you want to get that money back, especially if it's substantial.
Yeah, this is when you realise you bought everything on eBay and you didn't pay any VAT anyway. Okay, so that's pretty much the kind of thing that you do. It's helping people ask themselves these questions, make sure that the business is set up in the right way, that they're keeping on top of all of those numbers, and helping you run your business on a day-to-day basis. And I think it's about working on your business rather than in your business a lot of the time. And a lot of the time, people that start in business, they do it because they're very good at doing a job, not necessarily at running a business, but the job that they do becomes the business, and then they have to learn all of those extra skills. And this is the gap in the kind of the formula that you fill in, is taking them from that level to being able to keep track of the business and having that insight into how the business is doing at various different points.
Exactly, and that is the area that we are specializing in. So if you are running a business, then seeing your numbers becomes an integral part of that, because if you can see the numbers at regular intervals, which will be your management information systems or your MIS, if you're able to see those broken down at a granular enough level, then you can use that in strategy, and that's the key. So helping businesses work on the business instead of in the business. We help various size businesses, helping them in breaking out their different sales, making sure that they understand the different components of sales, creating MIS so that on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, we're having those meetings with them. We're challenging them, acting as an accountability partner with them, in just, making sure that you know where the business is. We can be looking at the low-hanging fruit, coming up with strategy as to why particular aspects of the business are not doing what they need to be doing, and then coming up with action plans on how you can then drive those aspects of the business and take them where you want them to go. And that is is usually the next phase once you've gotten the business up and running, and you want to make sure that you are on top of things. And yes, from there it is just being as agile as possible in running the business and taking the business to the next level.
Yeah, because that's a whole nother subject, because we've talked a lot about the startup phase, but then you've got scaling up, you've got maybe franchising, kind of opening more outlets or branches or growth. It can be a whole different set of challenges when your business does reach that point that you're employing more people. Maybe you've got different kind of locations that you're operating from, and kind of dealing with all of those extra challenges and keeping on top of things when it's not just you.
Yes, exactly. So business is dynamic, right? There's a lot usually going on. When you first start, you decide, I want to reach a certain threshold, and then once you've reached that threshold, there's a bit of profitability. You start thinking about expanding and scaling and how to do that. But remembering that as you're doing all of this, there is still life happening around you. To focus on the business, usually, I say to people that the entrepreneurship world is very lonely. You hardly have people to talk to. It can be somewhat challenging. So that is where, at least from a business perspective, we're there to be an ear. We can talk strategy. We can talk about the business and where you want it to go. We can put the plans together with you, and then we can put some actions together so that by the next meeting, we're having board meetings and so on and so forth. By the next meeting, what you're trying to achieve. We start talking through the expansion plans. The best case in point is I've got clients who they started small. It could be, for instance, in manufacturing. They they maybe started as sole traders. They then moved into becoming a limited company, and then with their revenue and profitability started to grow. They then took on new staff. It's the training, the development of those staff, and then they start as the capacity and capabilities increase. Then they find that their current location may be a bit of a challenge. They then have to move into a bigger location and start thinking, what other products can we bring into market? And it's just having those conversations as you're also looking at the numbers, and making sure that the numbers are driving the thought process that you have. Because once the numbers start, once the business starts to do well, you can start thinking about finance. Where is we need additional money to be able to grow and expand, and just thinking through finance, that can lead to a whole range of other areas. Because yes, how do you finance? Do you get money from friends and family? Do you go to a bank, a high street bank? Do you go to some of the other smaller finance companies, and so on and so forth? So there's a plethora of things that come from that.
And I think with all of those things, again, it's so important to be on top of your numbers, especially if you're going to a bank asking for finance. If you've got a solid business plan, you've got your accounts done properly, and you can show the business growth over time, then the bank is, it's a no-brainer. It's going to say, yeah, we'll invest some money in your business because we know that you're a safe bet. But if you don't have that paperwork and everything in place, then it's going to be very hard to get finance.
And very interestingly, right? So with business, what you find is that opportunities drop on your lap, right? So the opportunity drops on your lap. You're having you're playing golf as a good example with someone. You're telling them what you do. They say, oh, okay, fantastic. Can you do this? But then they are much a bigger firm. You need to get some financing to be able to do it. But then you realize, I don't have all of the structures in place, right? I don't have a business plan. My accounts aren't done. I don't have any management accounts to show, and so on and so forth. Then you want to start trying to get all of that done. But that in itself takes time, right? But if you've disciplined yourself from inception because you already knew that you were going to, go to greater heights, right? And you've disciplined yourself, you've prepared yourself to make sure that you can get all of these things in place. When those opportunities fall on your lap, presto, you're ready, right? And there you go. And there's opportunities that you can then grab, and we see this all of the time, right? So there would always be clients who are all set up, ready for any opportunity that comes their way, and then there would be others who have to play catch up in order to be able to sort these things out. Now the question will be, as always, which would you rather be?
So interesting. There's so much to talk about, and this is what's quite exciting about this podcast, that we can really do a deep dive into a lot of these subjects in the different episodes, and can give you a lot of information, a lot of guidance. So whatever it is that you're facing at that moment in your business, there'll be an episode that will be talking about that will hopefully give you some support. But obviously the best thing is to have somebody working with you that can help you keep on top of all of those things.
Yes, exactly. And so, we are going to take it, early days is a new experience for us. So it is, coming together, planning and answering the questions that we get, day on day from clients, prospective clients, and so on and so forth, business people and entrepreneurs. We want to be able to help people, start, scale, grow. The sky is the limit for people in general, and we are very keen on having businesses thrive in the UK and internationally, because we do have some international clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's going to be so interesting to hear from other businesses that have faced the same kind of challenges that you might be going through, to hear how they've dealt with those, what they've done that they would do differently, and learning from other people's experience. That's going to be so useful and so insightful. So really looking forward to that on the podcast. So there you go. If you want to get in touch with us, you can do so. The details are on the podcast description. We'd love to hear from you. Leave your comments. Make sure you like and share and subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you very much to Sobukola from Traballo Accountants.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chris.